What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. All right, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. And yes, we are going back to the tropics. There's not much going on in the U.S. in regards to winter weather. And if you're wondering why we're going back here, Patrick, you thought hurricane season was over. What's going on? We've seen some models that could indicate some more tropical development off the gyre, just a little bit more as we get towards the right at the end of November and into early December. You're probably wondering now, Patrick, slow down. That usually doesn't happen. Why are we talking about this here? Well, we have multiple ensemble runs and even a few operational runs that we can go over and show you what may be happening. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it right here and just go over some of the runs. All right, so starting off, we have our European ensemble runs right here, and we're mainly going to go ahead and start off with this one right here, since this is kind of your most established model that we have for you guys. And I do want to preface this by saying that not all that these models are somewhat far out, like they don't start developing this till about a week out, but because there's so many of them and they're so rather consistent, I am interested in talking about them and kind of going over the scenarios and looking at the synoptic conditions as well, and just kind of giving a full picture as to how this could be possible, what we could be doing with this, and how things could be going moving forward. So that's what we're doing with this. We're going to mainly look at these ensemble runs. We're going to look at the conditions around it and kind of see, okay, how favorable is this, and is this a possible scenario? So starting off, we're going to go ahead and go to about 7 days out with the ensembles right here. You do start seeing a little bit starting to pop up here off the coast of Panama right here in the extreme southwestern Caribbean Sea. What this setup is going to mainly be is it's likely going to be a gyre setup. And what a gyre setup is basically a tropical system that develops off the Central American gyre, broad area of low pressure that develops over Central America, produces thunderstorms, allows low pressure systems to detach and form their own tropical cyclones, whether it's in the East Pacific or in the Caribbean Sea, or in rare instances like Hurricane Milton, the Gulf region as well. So that's what we're looking at right here, and we do have that starting to pop up a little bit. Not a lot of ensembles, I would say, but still ensembles to pay attention to at this time. And then as we get to 8 days out, that would be November 30th, you start seeing these ensembles starting to pop up more. You're starting to see a little bit more power with them as well. You're seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, up potentially 10 ensembles starting to show something out of the 30 from the European forecast right here. You do have 1,005, 1,006, 1,007, 1,005 ensembles right there. So you definitely are seeing some power and some lower pressures with this ensemble run right here that you're going to want to pay attention to. And then as we go to 9 days out, which will be the 1st of December, you do have this starting to get a little bit more scattered, to get a little bit more interesting. And then as we get to this December 2nd, you do start to see a little bit of this ensemble starting to kick around. There's some uncertainty in where this might go. Europeans kind of scattered all over the place at this current point. It's early. We don't know everything at this current point. You have 990, 1,004, 1,005. All right, here, so definitely a little bit of power associated with it, but we have a lot of question marks with this right here. Number 1, what are the conditions going to be like? Number 2, what's the wind shear going to look like? And number 3, how is this going to pan out in the long run? So that's what we have with the European run at this current point, and we'll go ahead and compare and contrast. Here's what we have with the GFS ensembles. GFS ensembles definitely a bit more favorable for that development as well. Taking a look at that, we're going to go ahead and start off. I would say probably it's covering this, but we'll go 162 hours out. That'll be on the 28th of November right here. You do see a little bit of ensembles picking up. I do think some of them aren't as legit as they may seem right here. The reason it looks like this is because it's favoring vorticity that comes off of South America and then develops, which that usually actually never happens like that. It's just probably the GFS doing GFS things right here. That's the best way to sum up this ensemble suite right here. But it does get a bit interesting about 8 days out, which will be the 30th of November. Right here, as you do see 1001, 995, 1006 as well. If it does develop, it's likely going to stay in the Western Caribbean, at least for the early runs right here, but something to pay attention to regardless. So that's what we have for 9 days out as well. Taking a quick gander at that, you're seeing more power with these ensembles as well. Not entirely buying into this scenario right here, where we see a very strong tropical system like what we're seeing with the GFS right here. But by and large, the GFS is showing some tropical development happening in parts of the southwestern Caribbean, although a large portion of it is mainly just the GFS being the GFS. However, the AI models, which have been pretty spot on this hurricane season, have really picked up the signal, and they're going, okay, we're watching this. We have a good shot at something happening here. And let me go ahead and show you what I'm talking about. Starting off with the FNV3, we do have the 0Z and the 6Z we can show you on both of those right here. Here's what we have for the 0Z about 10 days out, so that'll be on December 2nd right here. Not really showing one ensemble starting to pop up a little bit right here. That's really just kind of rides with it, I would say, and you get to have this ensemble really ramping up in strength, which is likely not going to happen at this current point. And then going to 13 days, which is December 5th. Yeah, that's not a scenario that's going to happen. But if we do go ahead and go on back and go to the 6C models, that's when things get a bit more interesting and a bit more intriguing. You do see more ensembles starting to pop up by around November 30th on the FNV3 run right here. Definitely something to pay attention to going forward. And then as we go to the 1st December, you're seeing more ensembles starting to pop up. This, once again, your gyre setup starting to kick in to gear right here. Definitely going to want to pay attention to it. 1007, 998 millibars as well on the higher end. And then as we get to December 2nd, you see more of these ensembles starting to pop out right here. Majority of them stay in the Western Caribbean Sea, take its time to organize and develop. If it does develop, it's not going to be too well organized at first, but we'll have to see what happens and see how that pans out. And then as we get to 11 days out, this will be the 3rd of December, we're looking at more of these ensembles with quite a bit more power associated with it as well. So you're going to want to pay attention to that 998, 991. Wind speeds potentially 60 to 70 knots, which is around strong tropical storm to weak hurricane strength right here. I'm not going to go ahead and say that we're expecting a hurricane or anything like that at this time of the year. No, there's too many factors that we need to consider other than just models, and we're going to go over them. But I did want to kind of emphasize that as well. And then going to 12 days out as well, taking a quick gander at that. The FNV3 is definitely showing a lot of power, and then you have a couple ensembles entering the Gulf region, potentially impacting Florida a little bit, and then as we get to about 13 days out, that shows that as well. So that's what we're dealing with right now with the FNV3. That's the latest FNV3 model that we do have. It's a legit signal, but it remains relatively weak at this current point. We'll have to see what happens in the next few days. And then we have the GENC run as well. Definitely showing some stuff going on as well. Here's where we're at about 8 days out. Ensembles really start to pop out over here. 1001, 1005, 1007, 1006. Right here, mainly staying in the Western Caribbean, again, mainly coming from the gyre at this current point in time. Then as we get to 9 days out, that's crossing into the 1st of December right here. You do have a 999 millibar system crashing into Jamaica, but I'm ruling that out. It's mainly going to stay in the Western Caribbean if it does that at this current point, if it does develop. Then as we get to 10 days out, you do see this system starting to develop and head towards the Gulf region, particularly maybe impacting Western Cuba a little bit before heading towards Florida at the end of the run, as you saw. Then as we get to December 3rd, right here, definitely seeing these ensembles are really starting to turn up and really starting to ramp up. Right here. If something does develop, it's likely going to be a tropical storm strength, but still considering that this is December now, that is quite impressive to say the very least. This hurricane season has been a very interesting one. We've had 3 Category 5s with but only 13 named storms to go off of. It's either been tropical storm or Category 5 hurricane this season, and the fact that we could see another named system out of this a year, even after hurricane season officially ends, based on some of this guidance, is a pretty interesting prospect to consider. So that's what we have going on with the ensemble runs. That's just something I've been looking at, something I've been paying attention to. I'm not taking this too seriously right now. I am keeping an eye on it because this is a legitimate signal, but I do want to look at the conditions as well. I don't just want to look at the models and go, oh, it's going to develop, guys. Oh, it's going to develop. You're looking at this whole scenario, guys. It's going to really go off. Not going to do that right here. But what I am going to do is look at the conditions and see how they may pan out. And looking at analysis tools, we're going to go ahead and look at the water temperatures. We're going to go ahead and go to the Western Atlantic and pull these up right here, starting with your sea surface temperatures. Looking at this right here, pulling up the Tropical Tidbits site. I know it's not our normal website that we use. I shut down a lot of our tropical stuff for the year, actually, so I'm just getting this back up. But here's what we have for you right here. 29 degrees Celsius, maybe cracking close to 30 in a few areas closer to the Western Caribbean and closer to Jamaica. But 29 degrees Celsius water temperatures is what we're seeing right here across much of the Western Caribbean where this is going to develop. So for those of you who do not know, 29 degrees Celsius is about 84 degrees Fahrenheit for those that do not use the metric system. And that is more than enough warm water to favor tropical development on its own right there. And another thing we need to look at is the ocean heat content right here. Taking a quick look at that, we'll go ahead and pull this up for you guys right here. Our trusty dusty ocean heat content map. Here's what we got for you right here. This is as of November 22nd. Right here, taking a quick gander at the North Atlantic maps right here. Here's your OHC. Definitely pretty interesting as well. Looking at OHC, you're going to start off, if these models do hold, you're starting off at about, I'd say, 50-ish OHC at this current point. And then as time goes on, as this moves further up to the north, you're looking at about 75 to 100 OHC as it moves into the Western Caribbean Sea as it moves towards Cuba, but then you see a massive drop-off as you enter the Gulf. You're looking at about 50 OHC after you get to past the loop current right there, and then not much OHC at all, actually, as this may turn and potentially head towards Florida. We're going to have to pay attention to that as well. And looking at back at the water temperatures, by the time you move into the Gulf region, other than the extreme southern part of the Gulf where you see 28 degrees Celsius along the Gulf Stream, which is about 82 Fahrenheit, you're going to see cooling waters as it approaches that region right here, as it approaches Florida, according to some of the models that we've seen. We also have to take into account wind shear as well, and we're going to go ahead and use the Europeans' wind shear map to show you what that may be looking like. Here is your wind shear right here. Right now, it's pretty unfavorable at this current point. Taking a quick gander at that, wind shear is definitely going to be an inhibiting factor for quite some time. That's why we're not expecting development until at least a week out at this current point. But you do start to see a little bit of a lift of wind shear in the southwestern Caribbean as that gyre starts to act up as you get towards the end of November and as you head towards early December right here. If this system does develop, it's going to have to battle through so much wind shear. I'm not saying it's impossible, especially as you get towards later in the run. The wind shear definitely does weaken. You start to see a ridge develop in parts of the Gulf region right here, and you actually do see an area of very low wind shear really start to pop out right here as the system moves further to the north. So as it establishes itself and as it moves towards the northwestern Caribbean, you do see a very big collapse of wind shear right here. This would be the time where a tropical development would take place right here. This whole wind shear collapse would favor tropical development if these models continue to hold. we're going to want to pay attention to it. And initially, when these models do initiate, I don't think the tropical development is going to be very fast. I think it's going to be very gradual. If it does it at least until December 2nd, when that wind shear field collapses. At that point, you could have your very likely your very last tropical cyclone move through and develop right there. But that wind shear pocket is very brief. You start seeing wind shear really start to ramp up the next couple of days, and it ramps up, but it remains relatively weak as you get towards the end of the run. And by that point, the system will have probably run its course by the time we get to December 6th. But you do have a time frame of low wind shear that kind of allows for it to get favorable. You have an anticyclone that moves into the Gulf region around December 2nd. You do start seeing that wind shear weaken, and then as you get to the 3rd, it really starts to collapse entirely, and things might get a bit interesting for at least a good, I'd say, 48 to 72 hours. At that point when that wind shear pocket is the most prevalent, but that's something that you're going to want to pay attention to, and we're going to want to see how this evolves. That's your wind shear. Let's look at your relative humidity. Relative humidity, or your moisture component to all of this, going to be interesting for sure. It's going to be very dry across much of the Caribbean, at least initially, but then as the gyre starts to set up, moving forward, you start seeing this bigger cluster of thunderstorms. It does help moisten up the atmosphere, and then as we get to November 30th and December 1st, you do have some dry air. You have quite a bit of dry air, actually, that you're going to have to battle. So if this system does develop, it's probably going to be a disorganized mess and probably tropical storm strength at most. Based on these charts right here, it's mainly going to be the dry air that inhibits it. So unless it can mix it out and produce its own convection and take advantage of that weak wind shear, you're not really going to see that much happen based on this. But you still are seeing some pretty exciting stuff potentially happening right here. The GFS is definitely excited about this. The AI models are definitely excited about this as well. So that's stuff that you're going to want to pay attention to. And like I said earlier this video, the AI models have not missed very much this season. Invest 91L, for example, the infamous Invest 91L incident back in September. What ended up happening was the operational runs were very favorable for tropical development, at least for lucky development. The AI models was like saying, no, it's not going to develop at all. And we had a 60-90% scenario. Then it just completely killed off as the rest of the models downtrended. So that's an example of that. Another good example is what Melissa did. The AI models were on top of that entirely. So that's just, it goes to show how much they've been spot on and how much they've been kind of riding and how good they've been this season. It's kind of honestly like the GFS in 2024, to be honest. It's eerily similar to that. The GFS was spot on in 2024 with most tropical development. It had some misses there here and there, especially late in the season, but you still had the GFS being the more accurate and more conservative run compared to the European in 2024. But anyway, speaking of the GFS, just to kind of show you this for craps and giggles right here, here's the 0Z GFS, has the system organizing and developing and then starting to strengthen. The GFS wants this to get up to strong tropical storm to hurricane strength right here. But this is going to be interesting, and this is going to be the reason why we see the system head towards Florida. There is going to be a cold front that moves through parts of the United States and the Gulf region that could push this towards Florida. The GFS wants this to crash into the peninsula in Alabama, Georgia. That's not going to happen. The cold front's likely going to get there based on the synoptic conditions and move that towards Florida based on this current point. We're going to have to wait and see how this happens. This is very far out. There is a lot of uncertainty with this, and we have a lot to pay attention to and a lot to look at. Is it a legitimate signal? Yes, it is. Is it a particularly strong signal? No, it's not. But we will continue to keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel, both that snowstorm that may be happening in early December and this tropical system that may be influenced by that. So we have a lot to talk about over the next little while, so stay tuned. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you'd like to help out, hang out, or ask us questions, feel free to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that will be in the end screen. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.